Hey guys, welcome back to Project Bodybuilding. We're just about done with my road to the Arnold Classic Series, but I have a couple of more previews before the big day. In today's video, I have a bit of a what-if scenario. We all know Akim Williams. Big Akim Williams is one of those guys that has insane potential, but has really only nailed it about once. But when he did nail it at the 2020 Olympia, he managed to not only place top 6, but he put everyone else on notice. However, he's never reached that high bar that he set for himself since. Very recently though, he put out an update, and although it was very short, it spoke volumes. It was literally just a side chest pose, but if you look closely, Akim is peeled, and that has been one of his main issues for a while. And he's gotten the shoulder surgery he was after he was in a car wreck. So now he's recovered from that and he's operating at full capacity, and it shows. Akim will be coming into the show healthy, which we can't say for his last couple of showings, and by the looks of this update, it looks like we're actually going to see a great version of Akim. That is the core of my what if scenario today. What if we do see a good version of Akim? Now I do doubt most of these guys in this lineup will stack up to Samson and Hadi, so here's what I did. I decided to put one of Akim's recent versions where I felt he was pretty on next to James Hollingshead, Rafael Brandao, and Horst MD. Those guys seem to be in everyone's top 5 predictions around 5th and 3rd, so I wanted to see how Akim might stack up around them and see if he has the potential to place top 5. For the versions I used today, for everyone besides Akim, I'm just using the versions I've used of them in other comparisons. For James, it's the 2022 Arnold UK, for Rafael, it's the 2022 Olympia, and for Horst, it's last year's Romania Pro. And by the way, I do plan on keeping my analysis of each guy pretty concise besides Akim, obviously. I've compared all 3 of these guys together, and if you want to see those videos, check out my playlist of all my Arnold Classic previews. This video isn't so much about them, it's more about how and where Akim falls into this lineup. I will still rank everyone and have a scorecard at the end, and I may even change some of my placings from previous videos because things change in a lineup, but I'll speed up my analysis of these 3 to save time in the video. Anyway, what about Akim's version? Well, I wanted Akim's version to be good, but I also wanted it to be recent. I'm not using his 2020 Olympia version, as good as that version is for him. It's been almost 4 years at this point, so I think it's unrealistic to some degree. So I used a more recent version, the 2022 Tampa Pro, which he won. It's not his absolute best version, I get that, but it's his best recent version, so I went with that. Anyway, that's more than enough exposition. Let's get into the first pose. If you guys like these types of videos, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Right out of the gate, Akim wins the pose. Akim really combines the best of both worlds from this lineup. You have guys like James who are big and leaning into that bodybuilder look, but you also have guys like Rafael who bring less mass but better aesthetics. Akim has the bodybuilding aspects for sure. The quads are huge and cut up, but to be fair, everyone in this comparison does have great quads. But upstairs, Akim has that great level of thickness when you look at him. The pecs are still so full even though his arms are lifted up, the lats are wide and developed too, regardless of the high lat insertions. But perhaps most importantly, Akim wins the arms. He has a lot of mass and hang in those triceps and great bicep peaks. Horst has great bicep peaks too, but Akim's arms are much drier. You can literally see striations in that right bicep. And Akim's forearms are much better. So honestly, with that level of thickness and mass, I think he's the best bodybuilder on the stage. Now, he doesn't have the best outline. I would say that goes to Rafael for sure, and I may even put Horst above Akim too in that regard. But Akim is again the best of both worlds and still brings a solid silhouette. Akim's waist is actually very small, and he has big quads and a lot of shoulder width, so he has a great X-frame. We all know that the high lats are the bane of Akim's existence. It throws off the taper, but like I said, he still brings exaggerated proportions. He just doesn't flow as well. But he is the best bodybuilder on stage with the best arms, so I think his silhouette and that tiny waist is enough for him to get to first place pretty easily. Next, I would have Horst MD. I think he also combines bodybuilding qualities with aesthetic attributes too, and he has the second best arms. I'm putting Rafael in 3rd because although he cuts a great outline and has nice arms too, he gives up too much size, especially in this lineup. He gets exposed a lot in that department. I know some guys are going to say Rafael should be 1st and cite aesthetics as the reasoning, but this is open bodybuilding. Everything plays a role. Aesthetics, conditioning, and mass. And I feel guys ahead of him have a better combination of those 3 things. And finally, I do have James in 4th. I'm just not liking his aesthetics on this one, they hurt him too much. He's not the widest guy through the shoulders, and his waist isn't super small either. The overall mass and legs are for sure insane, but he falls off in the arms. I think Akim wins this one decisively. It may look a little weird in this picture comparison, but I think if Akim is dialed in on show day and hitting this pose next to these guys, I think this win would be even more apparent. You can't tell so much here, but Akim's amount of size and his proportions are actually crazy. So I stand by my decision to put him in 1st. The front lat spread falls off a little for Akim. The main problem, of course, being the high lats. And sure, we can see that he doesn't have the best taper, but the lats themselves are actually pretty massive. But honestly, they're so good that perhaps the major issue in this one, the more important issue, is the imbalance that he has in the lats. That left lat is absolutely humongous, and the right one is noticeably smaller. I definitely don't remember him having a big imbalance like that, and I did notice that he is tilting the right side closer to the camera with this pose, so maybe it's a lot worse in this pic than it actually is. Regardless, this pose is still okay for Akim. He still has those big and ripped quads from the front front, and his waist is staying really tight, and that chest is so dense and teeming with detail. Akim just has his flaws in the worst area to have them in for this pose, the lats, and that hurts him. I definitely don't have him in first. I love Rafael's pose way too much. Rafael is clearly giving up a lot of size, but that outline is just incredible. It's the perfect X shape. And his lats really aren't that bad. They taper really nicely and they're really wide. He doesn't have the mass of the others overall, but he excels in that aesthetics department enough though. He sticks out for not being as big, but also having that terrific outline. After that, despite the flaws, I am putting Akim. Let's face it, Horse doesn't even know how to hit the front lat spread and it looks really awkward. And James's lats are pretty small. He does have a good X-frame though, better than he did in the front double. Akim may have higher lats and an imbalance between them, but we can't argue that his lats are actually massive. He does have the biggest and most developed lats on the stage. Horse probably could have won this one or placed second, but he put himself all the way down in fourth for whatever he's doing. James gets third because he has a much better outline. He has the exaggerated X shape with those freaky legs, he's just missing the lats. So yeah, Akim does fall into second here, but you can't say his lats aren't huge. And the waist is still tight and the legs are still huge, so you can't say it's not a half decent X-frame either. So despite Akim not doing too well in this one, I think he does enough to at least beat James, who's structurally challenged, and Horse, who can't hit this one to save his life. Akim turns up the heat when we turn these guys to the side. This guy is thickly muscled, and honestly for his reputation of having thicker, watery skin, he still brings a lot of detail in a couple of places. His side leg has insane lines in it. He has the clear separation and tie-ins between quad, ham, and glute, which is deeply striated by the way. The only one he's really contending with here in the side leg is Horse. James has the size but not the detail, and Rafael has a little bit more of the detail but not the size. Now Akim does beat Horse in details. He has more lines and the tie-ins are clearer, but Horse has that crazy hamstring drop. And although he doesn't have those deeply etched details, he is still dry. I could honestly have either guy here. I'm slightly favoring Horse right now though. Going upstairs and taking a look at Akim's massive delt and arm, and then taking a look at everyone else's, makes it clear that Akim wins the entire upper limb. That bicep and that tricep are so thick, and that forearm is a really nice touch. His brachialis is just jumping out between his bi and tri. Now on the pecs, I think Akim is solid. He obviously has a lot of density there and detail too, even in this lower quality pic. But I wish his pecs were just jutting out a bit more, but that is a nitpick for sure. Zooming out and looking at Akim's physique as a whole, you can see that he is filling out his frame the most compared to the entire lineup. Akim beats Rafael for that reason alone. Rafael is definitely the odd man out, especially in this pose. This one is all about looking like a freak from the side, and Rafael is full in the pecs, but overall he's giving up a lot of size to everyone. So unfortunately he gets last place. Now everyone left is definitely in a league above Rafael, but I would say they are all probably in the same league. They're all bringing great poses. But someone has to be next on the chopping block, and that's going to be James. Like I said, they're all looking so good, we really have to start examining the small things, and that is unfortunately where James suffers a little. Akim has more detail in the side leg and in the pecs, and more size as a whole, which is crazy to say, but it's true. Akim looks to be the thicker one from this angle. And Horse has that crazy hamstring drop and the better pecs over James, so James takes third. That's not a loss though, not even close. Now between Akim and Horse, I could have gone either way. If Akim nails this one on show day, I think it'll be interesting to see on stage. Akim has more detail in the side leg than Horse and more overall mass, but Horse has more hamstring drop and the better pecs. This can go either way, but I'm giving the ever so slight edge to Horse, at least between these two pictures and this picture comparison. And this margin is incredibly small. It's really only coming from Horse having the better pecs. Horse does enough size-wise and in the side leg for the better pecs to be that deciding factor. The side may be Akim's strong area, but the back is by far his weakest one. Now, some of you may have noticed that Horse MD is not in the shot, and well, that's not an accident. Somehow his back is even worse than Akim, so I just decided to leave him off the slide to save myself time and to save room on this slide for the other competitors. Honestly, if this video wasn't about Akim, he would have been axed from this slide too. All of his main issues culminate in this one pose. We can see where he gets his reputation for that thicker skin. The back looks watery and smooth. And then the back is largely non-existent thanks to those high lat insertions. Akim only has upper back, and that's honestly pretty shallow too, but that thick skin isn't helping by blurring what details he does manage to bring. There's just no way Akim can win this one. He can beat Horse, sure, but that's not saying much at all. At least he escapes last. For the remaining two guys, I'm just sticking with how I had this in my last comparison. I like James's denser, more jagged back. Brandon looks a little smooth, but is a bit wider. Since this pose is all about detail and thickness, I'm keeping James as my winner. To be honest though, all these guys leave a little to a lot to be desired in the rear double. The rear lat spread is another uphill battle for Akim. I mean, he's pretty wide, you can't say that he's not, but he has zero taper, and his back looks weird because of those high lat insertions. That's really unfortunate for him. Like I said, he's really wide and he still has a lot of detail and density back here, even more so than in the actual rear double, but he's missing the taper aspect, and if you ask me, that's just as important as width. Maybe someone can get over Akim's lack of taper, that's fine if you can, I can't. I think it's weird. His back basically just ends at his mid back, and he has nothing from that point on. I definitely don't have him beating Horse. Horse has beaten both of these other guys in the the pose, and now he's beating Akim too. Horse's rear double is actually trash, but the rear lat spread is actually a really good pose for him. He's got the most width after all, good taper, and great hamstrings too, landing him in first. In second, I'm putting Rafael. He has less overall width and details, but the more aesthetic taper. He has that perfect V shape and a solid lower body. Now in third, this is where I could put Akim. I think even if I could look past his high lats, I couldn't have him past this point, but if I was looking at just width, this is where he would go. But this spot is instead taken by James. James is not the widest guy for sure, he's less wide than Akim actually, but James's taper is obviously much better. He's also very thick and detailed in this pose like Akim, but I would also give James the lower body here. Akim's hams are not on the level of his quads in terms of size nor conditioning. James, even in this blurry picture, has the more dug out hams and drier glutes compared to Akim. So unfortunately for Akim, thanks to mainly his high lats, he has finished dead last in this one. Luckily for Akim, we're done with the back poses and we get to return to the side for a strong pose for him. Akim lives up to his nickname in these shots and looks like an absolute beast. In terms of overall muscularity from this angle, it's no question Akim is winning. He just looks thick, the arm is freaky from forearm to delt, the pecs are bursting full, and that freaky side leg returns from the last side pose. Honestly though, he looks even more defined now. The only one Akim is contending with in that side leg is again Horse. I still like Horse a little more, but I think Akim gets a lot closer here. You can definitely have Akim in the side leg though for all that detail. I just really like Horse's crazy hamstring drop. Akim is arguably the correct choice though. Moving up to the midsection, I do think Akim is probably last here, only because someone has to be though. Akim is keeping it tight, but he just looks a little chunky here compared to James and especially Rafael. I could maybe put Horse behind Akim here though, because the more I look at this pose for Horse, the more the midsection bugs me. It looks weird and honestly it's not that small. Now to the all-important arm and the tricep, I think Akim does really well in the overall arm and the delt, but I think his tricep is on the weaker side of this lineup. He's definitely not the most defined nor the most massive. Overall, Akim does do very well besides that. He really does a lot of work in that overall muscle category. He looks bursting full and massive. I think that overall size alone is enough to defeat Rafael. Again, compared to everyone else, Rafael really looks out of place here. And his tricep is not the best. Maybe better than Akim's, but it doesn't matter when you're getting outmassed by this much. I'm putting Brandel in fourth for that reason. Now before I put Akim any higher, I have to first get this out of the way. It's going to be a contradiction from one of my comparisons, but things change in a lineup. I'm now putting James in first ahead of Horse and Akim. James has enough in that mass from the side, but I like his midsection better than both of the remaining guys, and his tricep is thicker. James combines some aesthetic elements oddly enough with a good tricep and a lot of mass, so that now leaves Akim and Horse. Earlier I was saying on a per body part basis, Horse was better just about everywhere, but I think when we zoom out and examine the whole physique and the whole lineup, I prefer Akim over Horse. Even though breaking it down, Horse won more body parts, I think Akim's physique just works more in this one. Akim has that crazy side leg, which let's be honest is probably better than Horse's, even though I like Horse more here, and Akim also has more overall size, definitely. He looks freaky. And he has the better midsection, although that really isn't saying much. The only thing that is keeping this close is Horse's tricep. It's definitely bigger and way more defined than Akim's. But I think this pose just looks weird for Horse. I can't quite put my finger on it. I think maybe Horse looks like he has great body parts, but they're just thrown together and have no real flow. Regardless, I'm just liking Akim more in this shot. He has a weaker tri for sure, but that overall thickness from the side is enough for him to beat Horse and get a narrow second place. The abs and thighs should honestly be a strong pose for Akim on paper with his smaller waist and his great quads, but he gets outclassed by everyone here. His quads are good, they're big and they're separated, but everyone has great quads here. Akim's abs are fairly mediocre too. They're not the most separated nor the most symmetrical. I definitely don't think he's picking off Horse MD. Horse has huge quads, and even if you're like me and think they look a little odd, I think he easily beats everyone in this lineup on his midsection alone. Best abs in the bunch by a mile. He's the only one with a true six-pack, a symmetrical and separated six-pack at that. I don't think Akim is going to pick off Rafael either. Rafael's abs are not actually that stellar, but they definitely get the job done against Akim. And in the quads, I do like Akim's more, but Rafael has that size and some feathering to go along with that. And finally, I don't think Akim can pick James off either. James has an overall grainy look. You can really see that in the quads. They're dry and he has that muscle maturity shining here. And he has feathering of his own. He actually has the best quads of this entire lineup. Now, James definitely falters a little in the abs. Genetically, he doesn't have the most symmetrical set. And he's never been that deeply separated here, but with his twisting shot, he puts a little more emphasis on the obliques. Akim's abs are maybe better than James's, but it would be by the slimmest of margins, and James won the quads, and with the overall dryness, I like him more. I like his posing more too. He's doing his best to minimize the waist, and his upper body looks so huge that he actually has a fairly decent illusion going on here. For Akim, I think he's just mediocre.
Mediocre?
For this lineup, just having massive quads isn't enough. You need to have good abs too, and that's where Akim falls off. We're ending this pose back in Akim's element with the most muscular. Now this is a good pose for Akim, it always has been, but I think he's been better. He's mainly missing that roundness and the 3D pop in the delts and the arms, which is a crucial detail. But he still has other great elements. All around he's very thickly muscled, he's got good detail on the pecs, and he's even showing off some quad feathering here. I just wish he had that extra fullness because I think that alone would give him an easy win, because he's already so good. But to be fair, I also think this is a shot where he would actually be helped by having all these guys on stage together. He can really draw that contrast with his level of mass between him and the rest of these guys. But as it stands, I don't think he's winning this one. I like James more. There's slightly less detail in James's chest, but overall he's looking like the more muscular individual. The legs are incredibly round, bulbous even, the pecs are huge, the delts are cannonballs, and those traps are just jumping off him. I would put Akim right behind James though, and like I said, I think this would be different on a real stage, but right now I'm just going by what I see. If Akim just had a little more pop, I probably would have had him first, that's how close this is. I think this decision can go either way. I almost had Akim here. Now the other two guys kind of fall off a little. Horse is in third, he has the arms, the delts, and the traps, but his pose is a little off. His legs look weird and he's leaning too far forward, and there's nothing going on in the chest. Finally, Rafael has got to be in last. I think he has a lot of fullness, but that's about it. He lacks the deep details in the chest and in the midsection, and he would definitely get exposed on a real stage too. I think the opposite would be true for him versus Akim. Akim could really look good on stage in this one, but as of right now, he's rounding this comparison out with a strong second place. This turned out to be quite the close comparison. All the scores are on the screen right now. Remember, the lower the score, the better. In first was James Hollingshead. Now, James was technically tied with Horse for first. They both scored 19 and won 3 poses. But I will break the tie and keep James as the leader of the pack. Horse had more last place finishes, and let's be honest, how are you beating James with a rear double like that? And in a previous comparison with just Horse and James, I did have James as the winner. It's close, but I am breaking this tie for James. In third, or second, depending on how you look at it, with 20 points was Akim, just 1 point behind the first two guys. And in fourth, still only 2 points behind the rest, was Rafael. So what does this tell us? Well, one, this is going to be a competitive Arnold. If I was an actual judge, I'd have my work cut out for me. This is seriously going to be a bitter battle if all of these guys are on. The second thing we learned is that Akim has an extremely high ceiling. He placed second or third out of these guys, depending on how you look at it, but really all of these guys could have been the winner. Don't put too much stock into James winning this comparison. Akim could have won, and the same goes for Rafael and for Horse. This is close enough that I think everyone could be justified as a potential winner. And keep in mind, this was Akim at maybe 80%. I mean, he was good at the Tampa Pro, but he wasn't at his best. If he manages to bring his 2020 Olympia package, he's top 3. I doubt he could topple Samson and Hadi even with that 2020 version, but he can beat everyone else. I'm pretty confident in that. But will we see that Akim? I'm not so sure. However, like I said, Akim does have a high ceiling. The Tampa Pro wasn't a 100% Akim, but he was still very, very competitive here. And if he was a bit better, I think he could have outright won this comparison. Now, he does have a high ceiling, but he also has a low floor. Akim can really be good. He can be top 3, but he has enough flaws that if he does coming off, he's going to be pretty far outside that top 5. He could show up with that thick, watery skin, and his back is going to be pretty poor regardless of how he shows up. So Akim can drop the ball, we've seen that, but we've also seen Akim really nail it about 1 or 2 times. And this comparison proves that even if Akim is not at 100%, he can really do some damage. I'm not going to say he won today's comparison. James was technically ahead, but I'm not going to declare a winner really at all. This was really close, and this was just a what-if scenario. And to answer today's question, what if we see a good version of Akim at the Arnold Classic, I can definitely say with confidence that he could ruin a lot of people's predictions. With that update alone, he had me second guessing my own predictions. The moral of today's story is, Akim can either be really good or really bad. Akim doesn't even have to be his absolute best to beat this lineup. Akim can really do some damage in this lineup, don't count him out. I think there's a very good chance we see a very good version of Akim Williams. Well, that's going to do it for today's video. How did you guys see this one? Did you have it as close as I had it? What do you think about Akim? Do you think we'll see a good version again, or do you think maybe he's done? Whatever your thoughts are, tell me down below, and tell me where Akim is in your Arnold Classic predictions. By the way, be sure to check out Arms Race Nutrition. These guys make some fantastic supplements, the ones I use personally. Head over to armsracenutrition.com and be sure to use my code at checkout, code PROJECT10, for 10% off your entire order. That's code PROJECT10 at armsracenutrition.com. Finally, if you guys like this video and want to see more, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more, and check out my playlist with all my other Arnold Classic previews. With all of that said, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.
Gotta get that Lexia.